The standard evasive action in 5 Group, which was the group to the south of Lincolnshire, was the Corkscrew. This was essentially a sudden diving turn and then rolling at the bottom and going in the opposite direction, and then climbing again, twisting from one side to the other and repeating the whole process. I was a bit worried about the Corkscrew because I felt very vulnerable in the climbing phases. In the initial dive, when you were screaming downhill maximum speed, you had a feeling that you could outwit the man who was trying to tighten up behind you, because after all, if he's coming behind you, he's got to get his guns to bear in front of you, just like when you're shooting pheasants. You've got to be in front of them. And if you could make it more and more difficult for him to get his sights on you by diving and screaming away, then you had a good chance to get away. I'm sure that in the attacks that were made upon us, I invariably lost the fighter in that initial diving turn. Sometimes we went through the whole Corkscrew, but as I say, on the climbing phases, when you're slowly going up and then rolling on like that, I'm sure if he sat back far enough with his cannon, he could easily shoot you, as long as he got the visibility, because on a really dark, mucky night, it was our advantage, of course. He probably wouldn't be able to find us. Then, of course, the Germans got some very clever radars, and they adopted a different system. And when these fighters came up underneath us with guns that were fitted to fire upwards, I don't think we'd got a chance at all. And so many people were just shot out of the sky, never knowing that they were being attacked. First thing that happened was a couple of cannon shells in the wing there, and the whole airplane on fire. Obviously, I never was attacked by Schlager music. I don't think I'd be here to tell the tale.
The conditions were not particularly good because there was very little heating in the aircraft. It was very cold, it was quite drafty, and people like the rear gunner was stuck out at the end and actually had a clear vision panel cut in the turret, so they were open to the open air and therefore extremely cold. It was therefore very necessary to talk to your crew quite often to make sure that they were awake and alert and looking for fighters so that you were not jumped upon. It was essential for your gunners to spot the fighter in sufficient time for you to carry out the corkscrew manoeuvres, which, if carried out correctly, made it fairly impossible for a fighter to shoot a Lancaster down. The Lancaster was very, very manoeuvrable. It could be stood on one wingtip and would corkscrew very, very well. It's so manoeuvrable that at least one of the test pilots of A.V. Rowe would quite often slow roll a Lancaster after he'd put it through a test flight. I don't think you can get a better recommendation for manoeuvrability than that. I know from personal experience also that it was very, very manoeuvrable, although of course I did not try to do slow rolls with bomb loads on.
We were attacked by a Ju-88 over the sea, and the gunner spotted him, called out for the pilot to go to, I think it was Corkscrew, to port, and as the wings tilted, he fired at us, and he took about 2 feet off the top of the rudder and a chunk off the end of the wing, and that was the most damage we suffered. Fortunately, the rudders still worked and the ailerons still worked, so we were able to come home, and he only made one run at us. He obviously thought we'd spotted him and he was not going to chance his arm anymore. But that's a typical kind of attack.